coffin as she resigns from the Marcos cabinet in a shock move, giving up her post as Education Secretary and Vice Chairperson of the NTF-LCAC. Duterte says she will continue to serve as Vice President.
President Marcos accepted Duterte's resignation, though Malacanang said she declined to give a reason. At a press con earlier today, Duterte also did not explain why she quit, but would only say this should not be taken as a sign of weakness.
Sa 2 taon nating pagsasama, ang kwentong nabuo natin ay kwento ng kapit-bisig na pagtaguyod sa adhikaing maitatag ang isang bansang makabata at batang makabansa. Ngunit anumang kwento, kahit gaano kaganda, ay sadyang nagtatapos rin. Earlier today, June 19, 2024, I sought an audience with the President and tendered my resignation as the Secretary of Education effective July 19, 2024. I have given my 30-day notice to ensure the proper and orderly transition for the benefit of the next Secretary. Ang aking pagbibitiw ay hindi lulan ng kahinaan, kundi dala ng tunay na malasakit para sa ating mga guro at kabataang Pilipino. Bagamat hindi ako magpapatuloy na mamamahala sa kagawaran, patuloy pa rin nating itataguyod ang kalidad ng edukasyon na nararapat para sa Pilipino.
For most of her speech, Duterte looked back on the past 2 years that she served as DepEd Secretary. She listed down all its achievements under her leadership and thanked LGU's stakeholders, DepEd personnel, teachers, and everyone who helped the agency. Duterte's resignation as DepEd chief takes effect on July 19. Reporters tried to ask her questions, but she immediately left the building after reading her prepared speech.
Hindi man ako ang tumatayong kalihim ng edukasyon, mananatili akong isang ina na nagmamatyag at titindig para sa kapakanan ng bawat guro at bawat mag-aaral sa Pilipinas. Para sa isang matatag na Pilipinas. Mga kababayan, lahat ng ating ginagawa ay para sa Diyos, sa bayan at bawat pamilyang Pilipino. Syukuran. Thank you.
In a very short statement issued by Presidential Communications Office Secretary Sheloy Garafil afterwards, Garafil said she declined to give a reason why she will continue to serve as Vice President, and we thank her for her service.
DepEd spokesperson attorney Michael Poa, who has in the past spoken for the Vice President, said in a statement, "We understand that most are curious as to the reason behind such decision. But what is of greater and pressing importance is that a proper transition be made from the next secretary." He also asked for patience, especially from the media, as he says that they will not be taking interviews on the matter during the transition period.
For its part, the NTF-LCAC says Duterte's tenure as Vice Chairperson of the task force was marked by significant progress in their efforts to address the root causes of insurgency. The anti-communist task force also expressed gratitude for Duterte's contributions and leadership.
Key allies of the Dutertes believe that Sara's resignation marks the beginning of her becoming the new face of the opposition. In a statement, former Duterte spokesperson Harry Roque said, "Unity team has formally been dissolved and she has just become the leader of the opposition. The line has been drawn." He goes on to say, "The Philippines finally has a real leader. Onwards to transparency, accountability, peace, and security. Let's redeem the Philippines."
That's it.
Meanwhile, former Rodrigo Duterte legal advisor Sal Padelo says Sara stepping down from the cabinet shows that she has delicadeza now that she and President Marcos no longer see eye to eye on certain policies. Panelo believes she felt upset that Marcos did not defend her from issues around her confidential funds and against supposed attacks from the lower house.
Typo.
The resignation of VP Sara
Ayan na.
is
Ayun.
or means
Oy. Yun.
this is a new political ballgame.
Yun. Grabe.
At
Lalim.
marami ang matutuwa sa ginawa. Kung titingnan mo yung mga statements
Lalim
niya,
ng analysis ni
meron na siyang
Panelo.
mga meron siyang
Panelong
talagang
analysis.
banat. Kinukontra niya talaga yung major policy ng administrasyon. Kahit sinong nasa posisyon, at ikaw ang vice presidente, cabinet secretary ka, eh siyempre naghahanap ka rin ng kalinga ng iyong principal.
Malalim.
Meanwhile, Marcos's sister and Duterte ally, Senator Amy Marcos, said in a statement
Really
addressing
go?
Sara,
Wala,
"Ako
hindi ko
ay
pa turn
iyong
eh.
kasama sa bawat hakbang, bawat araw at bawat laban dahil iisa lamang ang nais
Malalim
natin.
kasi analysis
Mawagi
ni,
at
ano
magtagumpay ang
ni
mahal nating
Salvador
Pilipinas."
Panelo mo, yung favorite mo. Ayan na si Bato.
Senator Bato de la Rosa, Senator Duterte
Isa pa
ally,
to.
said that whatever
Ano?
Sara's reason may be, he believes it
Aba.
was well thought of and that she took the
Bato
best
saying
interest
well
of the
thought
people
of ang
into
isang bagay,
consideration.
medyo
Senate President Cheese
Ayan na.
Escudero, for his part,
Say
says,
cheese.
"I believe her resignation was inevitable
cheese.
from the time her father, FPRRD, and her siblings and allies started attacking
Sige lang.
PBBM and members of the
Aba,
First Family.
alam mo,
Its inevitability became more pronounced when she was already silent and not expressing
Aba,
her support
political
for certain
analyst pala to
policy
si Cheese
issues such as the
Escudero,
West
ah.
Philippine
Ganda ng
Sea,
analysis,
the Bagong
ah.
Pilipinas hymn,
Sige lang.
the Kibuloy cases, and
wow,
attempted
nagsulat ng
arrest.
kolom. Haba-haba ng explanation.
Senator Win Gatchalian was asked whether he believes the unit team no longer exists, and here is his response.
I'm part of the Unity team kasi 'di ba last 2022 I ran under the Unity team ticket. Hindi pa naman namin napag-uusapan kung as a unity team ano yung direction ng unity team, no? After the election very loose yung amin pag-uusap. So tingin ko maaga pa para sabihin kung ano yung magiging kalalabasan ng unity.
Sige lang.
But the analysts we've spoken to all agree on one thing, and that is this is not the end of it, that there are more political maneuverings to come. Earlier this evening, University of the Philippines professor Antonio Contreras spoke to our sister show, Sa Totoo Lang, and he had some ideas about who should take Sara's place as Education Secretary.
If I were to advise the president, get someone from the traditional political opposition who may be your allies now, and get someone who is an educator or at least of credentials and educational management. Posible si Mar Rojas.
Oh.
Actually, sabi ko,
Kawawa naman
baka
si Marco sana.
baka si sino pa ba? Baka si Laila de Lima, di ba? Malay mo. Di ba? Marami tayong pwedeng ilagay na pangalan. Pero I think, kung gusto lang talaga ng presidenteng mga Sara, ang ilalagay niya dyan, yung dating yellow, na may credential sa education.
Sige lang.
Certainly nothing is permanent in politics, and this resignation by VP Sara is being seen as another turning point. Let's take a look back at the very short life of the Unity. It was back in November 2021 when Marcos and Sara Duterte officially teamed up under the Unity banner. It was an unexpected pairing. In fact, on October 2, 2021, Sara Duterte filed her certificate of candidacy as mayoral aspirant for Davao City. But the two were able to leverage their respective voter bases in the so-called Solid North and in Davao. This formidable alliance gave them a landslide victory in the 2022 polls, the first time in many years where a strong majority vote was seen. Marcos appointed VP Sara as DepEd chief, although Marcos said as early as the campaign trail that she had wanted the defense post. Now fast forward to May of 2023, VP Sara's ally in Congress, former President Gloria Arroyo, gets demoted from her post as senior deputy speaker. Days later, she would post a cryptic message about a certain ambitious tambaloslos, a term referring to a greedy mythical creature with a large mouth. VP Sara would later on resign from Lakas CMD, the political party she used to share with House Speaker Martin Romualdez. From there, the relationship between VP Sara and the House leadership continued souring, with the lower house very publicly scrapping her request for confidential funds for both the office of the Vice President and the DepEd. Come 2024, we saw more telltale signs of strained relations between the President and VP Sara, especially after word got around that the International Criminal Court was investigating former President Duterte's war on drugs. VP Sara also showed up to the prayer rallies in Davao City, during which her brother, Mayor Baste Duterte, called on President Marcos to resign, and also describing him as lazy and lacking compassion. Well, of course, this didn't sit well with Marcos supporters, especially First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, who got candid about it in an interview with TV personality Anthony Taberna or Katuning. The First Lady made headlines for saying about Sara, bad shot na sakin yan. This leads us to today's resignation. It came as a shock for most, though some analysts pointed to one more sign in the few days before, where VP Sara was quoted as saying the unity team was in a tandem during the 22 elections. We are no longer candidates.
Well, when you lay it all down flat like that, oh, I know.
It's understandable.
There have been telltale signs all along.
And the progression happened bit by bit,
That's
piece
right.
by piece.
Exactly. So to help us make sense of all these political moves, we have with us on the show Richard Haydaran. He's a senior lecturer at the UP Asian Center, and of course our resident political and geopolitical analyst. Richard, long day, huh?
No dull day in the Philippines. No, kakabalik ko lang from down under and in retrospect, parang boring ng buhay doon. Everything is good, everything is nice, no pollution, quality of food. Actually, now I'm looking if ano maging speech ni Tatay Digong, no, former President Rodrigo Duterte. I doubt that he's not gonna come out and potentially with guns blazing in response to the fragmentation and total disintegration of the unit team. I also wonder if the First Lady will also have an addendum to that. In fact, some people are making fun if there'll be a especially for you. Wait, sa kabilang channel pala yan. Edition on this. But going back to this discussion, this was a slow motion
Yes.
train wreck. This was a slow motion train wreck. We saw this coming. In fact, in 2021, before even the election started, I wrote a piece about how House of Duterte and House of Marcos were about to clash because both Sara Duterte and Marcos wanted to run for that top position. And eventually, because of divisions within the House of Duterte, meaning Duterte wanting Bongo to run, Sara was not happy with the situation, Marcos came on top. So it was really a tactical alliance to begin with. So if there's at least one occasion where I completely agree with Sara in terms of sincerity of her statement, it's when she said the unity was really for election purposes. So I think she really laid down the predicate just a few days before officially ending itong mother of all hugot kind of speech. What I found interesting is if you rewind to 2018, wasn't it? 2017, 20, when Leni Robredo resigned or was forced to resign, essentially driven out of the cabinet of Duterte, the father of the current vice president, ganon din yung approach na eh. Medyo malumanay, parang lumalabas na siya pa yung victim. And Sara Duterte did not articulate it, but I think what she was implying here, I'm trying to read what she was implying, is that dahil sa politika, naapektuhan yung kanyang abilidad to execute her job in the best way possible. And let's be honest, you look at all sorts of studies, the latest PISA rankings, on all fronts, the education sector in the Philippines is also a slow motion train wreck. So in a way, you could say maybe this is our heroic sacrifice, or at least that will be the narrative that her side will try to drive, aside from blaming President Marcos. But President Marcos can also come out of this with complete plausible deniability and say, on my side, I was always her number one fan. I always supported them. I believe in unity. I'm grateful to her. And whatever she chooses, that's her choice. But he can easily say na hindi ako yung nagpaalis sa kanya. Siya mismo ang taos puso na nag-resign dito. So I think there's some room here for this attrition warfare to continue, but not all-out war kaagad yet.
It's going to be a battle of the spin doctors. I found it interesting that even though she didn't give a reason, everyone understands that this is a very much a political thing. The first thing I want to know from you is, do you agree, as what everyone has, well, not everyone, but a lot of people have been saying, is that this is the start of her being rebranded as the face of the opposition?
Well, I mean, we know that there are clear policy differences between Sara Duterte and the family on one hand, and Marcos, and clearly one of them is the West Philippine Sea issue, right? I mean, she's quite infamous, or some would say famous, for the no comment essentially position on the whole West Philippine Sea issue. So actually, from an administrative operational standpoint, I wonder how comfortable Marcos would be discussing a very strong anti-China position when it comes to national security issues with Sara Duterte being around. So probably it made sense for her to no longer be in the cabinet considering the high stakes of the differences here. Now, is she going to be the face of the opposition? It will depend on the traditional opposition. We understand that the traditional opposition is divided in between what I call never Marcos versus never Duterte. So there are groups in the opposition who are saying, no, no, no. When it comes to these two dynasties, our bigger concern are the Dutertes, and we have to make sure that the Dutertes will never claw their way back to the Malacanang. And they were the ultimate also train wreck, I mean, word of the day, for Philippine democracy. But there are also many in the opposition who are in the never Marcos, the never again movement. And for them, Marcos Jr. is still a threat to our democracy, and that Dutertes are now a distraction. So I think the traditional opposition is quite divided, but I wouldn't be surprised there would be multiple oppositions in the coming months and, of course, ahead of the next year's election. So you have to make a distinction between ideological opposition, traditional opposition on one hand, and effectively the new opposition because of political differences and the disintegration of the unity team. Of course, sarcastically, I would say there's also the opposition of naging opposition dahil hindi binigyan ng opposition, right? There are also those kind of people who are waiting for their axe to grind as the election comes in.
Hey, Richard, do you think that this was really the product of a slow progression of events as we laid it down for you, or do you think this was more planned? Because if you take a look at the timing, it is 6 months before election period, mid-January. Filing of candidacies is October 1 to 8. I mean, she is vice president, but also, I mean, assembling a strong opposition lineup in the lead to the 2028 polls. We know the 2025 polls also counts very much. I mean, what do you
Right.
see here?
Good
There
point.
A specific tipping point.
Right, good question. I think, I don't know kung nakinig si Marcos at Malacanang sa mga vlogs namin, but the issue of grand coalition came up earlier this month when President Marcos Jr. discussed the possibility of a coalition of different parties as part of the administration ticket come 2025. And guess what? Hindi kasama ang hukbong. And definitely hindi kasama ang PDP Laban, at least yung faction ni Cuisi and Rodrigo Duterte. So I think 3 months earlier already, there was a signal that Sara Duterte or the whole Duterte camp will not be part of the administration. So I'm not sure how can you say this was all planned, because what was happening here was really a back and forth ping pong, right? There were times when the Dutertes took on the offensive position. Look at President Duterte going all guns blazing earlier this year, questioning the president's competence and even more. And then there were times that Marcos and sometimes the First Lady also pushed back quite aggressively. So it has been a ping pong between the two houses. And I think eventually right now, the battle lines are pretty much drawn. And to be fair to Sara Duterte, she was in a boiling frog situation, right? The more she waited and the more she stayed inside the cabinet, the more she was going to be cornered and bogged down. So I think it makes sense for her to have some time to prepare as the de facto leader of not necessarily the opposition, but at least one of the major oppositions to the administration come 2025. But as we know in the Philippines, unlike in the United States or other flagship democracies, midterms tend to be pro-incumbency, given the momentum of the incumbency, given the resources of the state. So Sara, if she ever becomes the face of the opposition, will be coming in from a position of relative weakness. Although they have a couple of pretty strong candidates for the Senate, including her brother Baste, or if not the two brothers, based on some of the preliminary surveys we're looking at.
Richard, I think it's important to note that this is the third consecutive administration where the vice president quit the cabinet of the Philippine president.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Didn't
So-
really realize that.
How might the resignations of former vice presidents Binay and Robredo compare or contrast to this one of VP Sara?
Yeah, I mean, the vice presidency is probably one of the most perilous positions in the Philippines. Sarcastically, it has been dismissed as a spare tire. But at the same time, it's also the office that is a heartbeat away from the presidency. And once you're a vice president, you're assumed to be essentially the top candidate to succeed the current president. That's why even in the United States, as we speak right now, Trump is scratching his head if he's going to get kind of a charismatic person to be his vice president, but not too charismatic to overshadow him. So imagine this is happening in the US when the vice president run under one ticket. So in the Philippines, when actually the two positions are contested separately, and the tendency is most of the time it's not based on a unity team, although we had the Noibi in 2010 and now the unity team. it is quite assumed that there'll always be some tension, and management of that tension will always be very, very difficult. And this time, it was really just untenable. I think this was almost inevitable if you look at how things have turned out. So that's why, for people who want to be the president, maybe you want to sit out the vice presidency. It's a very, very perilous position. For a while, the vice presidents from Erap to Arroyo had a good shot of being presidents, but actually, essentially, the 21st century has not been good to Filipino vice presidents. So it's the last political position I will recommend to anyone who wants really the highest office. But then again, it's also a heartbeat away from the presidency, so the temptations are probably too strong for some people to pass on.
Gusto ko malaman yung reaction mo dun sa speech ni Vice President. I did see your tweet. Ano sabi niya? I mean, tell us candidly. How did you find that speech? What
Well, I mean, I just check the comment sections. I mean, I sometimes I just post stuff to see the comments because the comments are a field day to me in terms of the Zarzuela of comments. No, I hope for me, I could see the struggle of the vice president. I'm kidding aside. I'm quite sarcastic, obviously, on Twitter. There are nicer versions of me elsewhere. No, I think she was really struggling because she didn't want to come out as bitter. She didn't want to come out as ungrateful. She didn't want to come out as power hungry. So weirdly, she came out kind of like Lenny. So you just put side to side speech of Lenny Robredo and speech ni Sara Duterte. They kind of come off quite similar, which is for me another irony. Maybe that's what the vice president does to you. Bumabait ka sa office na yan. Nakakabait ang vice presidency sa Pilipinas.
I want to come back to you saying that she isn't coming at this from a strong position. That makes her a bit more vulnerable now. So what are her options from here? Midterms is coming up, as you were just saying. Does she run for Congress? Does her brother run for Congress? Do they consolidate their base there?
Can she resign as vice president
and run? What are her feasible options from here?
Yeah, we are in uncharted territories. I mean, if you look at the Philippine politics today, we're kind of like the Berlin of like new Cold War is here. U.S.-China competition. There's also the great power competition. Then there could be the ICC element in the near future, if we were to believe some of the people who claim to have access or understanding of the timetable of ICC. Then there are the investigations against Duterte. So the Dutertes are really in a very tough position. They're quite cornered. And when you corner a very rambunctious and ferocious political dynasty like Duterte's, I won't be surprised they will pull off some crazy, out of the box unorthodox counter move. So I won't be completely shocked if suddenly she even decides to, I don't know, run back in Davao, right? To just give up the vice presidency, because at this time the vice president is like an empty shell, right? And her strategic depth is back in Davao. And if Basta Duterte runs for the higher office, if Polong runs for the higher office, who's going to be back home and to protect the rear guard? Because let's not kid ourselves. The other side is potentially also pushing for their rivals in Davao to make inroads into the Duterte camp. So they're going to be in this kind of I don't know, this could be like a battle of Waterloo. Like it could come from all different directions. So if you imagine, I have no envy for the position that Sara Duterte finds herself in right now. At the same time, I'm the last person to underestimate them. I think they made many strategic mistakes. I think there was a lot of hubris in a lot of their positioning. I think Marcos quietly cut them to the size, but they're not done. So I agree that tapos na yung first chapter. So I think this was the final act of a 3-4 act part. But we're now moving to second chapter. So abangan, there'll be more plot twists, and looking forward to joining you guys for breaking this down more.
We're running out of time, but just very quickly, I wonder if you have thoughts on what happens to where Senator Amy Marcos naman will go from here. She's also caught in a very tight position. She's the one who convinced Sara to run alongside her brother. We know she's very close to VP Sara. At the same time, we also know that she has a bit of a rift with the president.
Yeah.
Where does it leave her?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, of all major figures, she's probably the most, squeezed in between, considering everything. But, you could say always blood is thicker than, political alliance. But you can also say, Filipino politicians, my goodness, especially veteran politicians, are master navigators. I don't think they'll have much problem navigating this latest fault line. And let's be honest, I think this was coming for quite some time. Not to mention, I think, remember, Baste a few months ago also, threw some shades at Amy Marcos or something like that. So I'm not worried for her making the necessary adjustments. And if you're Amy Marcos right now, you're going to be very, very practical. Because if you look at the surveys, I think she's barely in the top 5 or 6, and it's really the top 4 or 5 who are runaway in terms of their numbers. The next 15 to 20 candidates are actually competitive. So I think Amy Marcos is going to be very, very practical in her calculation in the coming months if she wants to regain that seat or be reelected with seat in Senate.
Richard, final question on this topic. What is your grade for the Vice President as Education Secretary, if you can't give us a grade?
Is this the fast talk part?
And who do you think can replace her?
What name?
That's a very, very good question. I mean, I half sarcastically joke na maybe Lenny could be the next DepEd, and that would be a poetic justice. But I doubt. I know Lenny's gonna run for I think mayor or governor office or local government office. I agree with my former colleague in LaSalle, Professor Contreras, that this is where Marcos has a chance for a strategic decision, and he can strike at two birds with one stone by giving this position to someone like Balisacan, right? If you look at Secretary Balisacan, he also worked in President Aquino's cabinet, not necessarily yellow or belonging to the opposition, but someone who's very bipartisan and someone who's very technocratically competent. I really hope they get someone who, yes, I agree also with my colleague, Professor Contreras, you need someone with some sort of a PhD or some sort of a background in education because malala talaga yung situation natin. And I don't want to blame Sara Duterte alone. I know I'm being too political here, but yung malalim yung problema ng education natin, and it just happened that I don't think really Sara had the right team in place to deal with this kind of other slow motion train wreck we're having, which is our education crisis. So I don't want to be also overly unfair to her. What I want to happen is Marcos this time, hopefully hindi maging political, purely political, yung decision making niya for putting Sara Duterte, putting someone like Sara Duterte as education secretary. I can see the logic of grand coalition there, but someone sana may background talaga sa education kasi kawawa talaga ang bansa natin, kawawa talaga yung mga kabataan natin. And I say this as an educator and someone who's very worried about the future of this country's education landscape.
Hindi niya sinagot yung unang tanong ko eh.
Because maybe I want to apply, I'm just kidding. I mean, you never know. You never know, This is the Philippines, yeah.
So much to talk. Thank you so much
Salamat.
for your insights. As always, Richard Hidarian, Senior Lecturer at the UP Asian Center.
Pleasure. Adios.
Former DepEd Secretary.
Wait guys, wag kayong lumabas. Ano pa lang yan, patikim lang yan. Justice Carpio naman tayo, bilisan natin. Uy, in fairness, diplomatic ko. Ang ganda ng sagot ko. Akala ni Gretchen, mayari ako. Yan ang hindi nila alam. Kaya ko mag-shift gear kagad. Magbabalaura ka, biglang, ay, hindi, mabait. Just give her, Alam nyo naman, guys, yung kalakaran natin dito. Kaya nga, yari yung kalaban pag ako yung spokesman, eh. Kasi, kaya ko mag-sports gear, tapos, ganun, okay. Alright, let's get the ball rolling. Muntik ako nadali doon, Galing nung shift natin, guys, Aminin nyo, napabelieve kayo doon. Yung biglang, I have all respect for the good Vice President. Di ba? Kala niya, si BBM lang marunong magganyan, Kala niya, Wait lang, guys. Imbitahin lang natin si Justice Carpio. Sorry talaga dito. Sana hindi magalit ang magaling natin. Kasi ang dami natin pag-usapan sa West Philippines, guys. Ito talagang Pilipinas. Kasi ang daming sabay-sabay, di ba? Don't worry dun sa mga kameta natin, mga ka-deep diver, ka-TikTok natin, i-repost din natin dyan sa kabilang sa mga channels natin, final version once out. Grabe talaga, parang nag-livestream tayo ng spokesman, 101. Wait lang. Sir, baka naman. Baka naman, sir! Talaga to si Gretchen, may message ko to. Loko to, finastok niya ako. Akala niya, makuha niya ako. Hindi mangyari yan. Hindi ako magpapauling buhay. Walang magpapauling buhay dito. Para sa bayan yan. Para sa bayan. Akala nito, Wow. Wait lang, guys. Wait. Naghahang ako. Saan natin isend to? Para sa bayan. Oh, by the way guys, tomorrow morning naman, God willing, kausapin naman natin si Ted Filon. So doon naman tayo sa early morning sa show ni Sir Ted Filon. Pag-usapan din natin itong mga to. Wait lang. Parang ako yun hindi pala. Akala ko may sinend si Justice sa akin. Wait, parang ako yung kinukote ng article na yan. But anyway, wait lang guys. Nagsimula pa lang, uminit pa lang ang panahon. Papunta pa. Actually, dapat yun ang sinabi ko eh. Papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part. Yun sana ang sasabihin ko eh. Papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part. Ayan na. Si Justice Carpio. Oh, wait lang guys ah. Bila kasi, alam niyo naman, mahirap na. Para tayong mga yung maraming cellphone na text dito, text yan, baka naman, baka mahack ito, baka mahack yan, kaya text dito, kaya magulo. Mother, salamat sa kape ah. Daldal ko bigla, pero muntik ako nahuli doon. Nakita niyo guys, hinuhuli tayo eh. Nakita niyo yung ginagawa ni Gretchen eh. Alam na this. Di ako magpapahuling buhay. Okay yan ah, biglang, woo! Shift gear. Buyaka siya. Diplomat. Man of the people. 100. Man of the century. Yan, okay. I'm telling you guys, diba? Yung mga ganyang galawan, hindi yan ubra sa akin, guys. This is El Profesional, eh. I'm telling you guys, that was a 101 in being a spokesman. Immediately mag-shift gear ka. Never answered the question you don't want to answer. But answer it without answering it. Alam niyo na. Gagawa ko ng parang damit natin. Alam niyo guys, yung commercial ng masterclass. Di ba? Yung mga masterclass, parang masterclass in writing, gagawa rin ako ng masterclass in PR. Mga ganun. Never answer the question that you don't want to answer, but pretend to answer it. Ganun lang. Tsaka baka naman. Pwede naman tayo magligtas ng education sector natin. Hindi, joke lang. Wala naman akong expertise sa... Kasi iba yung educator ka, guys. I'm a proud educator. Nagtuturo lang naman tayo sa tabi-tabi, mga UP at Lasal lang naman. Pero yung kailangan talaga natin yung education management expert. Kaya, agree ako kay Sir Contreras, my former colleague, diba? Yung ating kaibigan dyan sa De La Salle University. Tagal Sige lang guys, huwag kayong magalit sa akin. Ayan na. Ayan na si Justice Carpio. Let's get the ball rolling. Justice! Kamusta po kayo? Pasensya, Justice. I mean, never a dull moment talaga. Oh my God, just when I was prepared to discuss West Philippine Sea, ito talagang, mga Dutertes talaga, they never give us the time to rest. Kamusta kayo, Justice? How are you po?
Okay. Busy also.
I know, exactly. I was thinking, siguro si Sir, hinahanap rin right and left. So thank you so much, Justice Carpio, for making time. Obviously, alam ng lahat, the value of our working together is precisely because it's a conversation between two persons who are heart and soul into the South China Sea issue. And of course, malapit na yung 8th anniversary na po tayo, di ba? 8th anniversary ng or
2016.
9th anniversary, right? Ng
2016 ngayon
8. Yeah, 8.
2024.
So 8.
10,
Di ba 8?
26.
Hindi, counted by 8, di ba? Okay. Anyway,
Yeah,
all right. So, my understanding is this year maging mas bongga yan dito sa Pilipinas. For some reason, actually, Justice, I'll be going to The Hague. Also, there are some events there to also bash China. So, I'm gonna take up that opportunity. So, I'm looking forward to the anniversary this year, God willing. Let's do what we have to do. So, obviously, Justice Carpio, pag-usapan muna natin latest developments sa West Philippine Sea. And then, pupunta tayo dun sa mga, your beloved kababayans from Davao, the Dutertes and Kiboloy. Let's get the ball rolling. Is there anything, Justice Carpio, you wanna add?
Wala. Sige.
Okay, good. Let's just let's get the ball rolling. All right. 1 second. Segundo. 1 second. Oops. Good evening everyone. Thank you so much dun sa mga nag-join sa atin dito sa Deep Dive podcast natin kung saan pag-usapan natin lahat ng mga angulo, 360 degrees, mga komplikadong issue, and we want to make them as understandable, relatable, and exciting, if not sexy as possible. Today, kasama po natin ulit. I'm sure he is a man in demand these days, and pasensya na also, Justice Carpio, of course, thank you for joining us, Justice, retired Justice, Supreme Court Justice Carpio. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Good evening, Richard. Good evening to our viewers.
Pasensya na, Justice, it's the Italian coffee, medyo doble na yung daldal ko ngayon, so if medyo bulol na ako, pasensya na. Obviously, Justice, we have to talk about a lot of things. May mga update kay Kibuloy, violent daw yung nangyari sa kanya, minonter canon daw yung police. I mean, what? And then obviously ito, nag-resign na. So officially, the unit team is over. Okay, before going there, Justice Carpio, on a serious note, pag-usapan natin itong nangyari sa West Philippines ngayon, hindi ba nakakabala ito, Justice Carpio? Now we have someone, a serviceman, losing at least a thumb. So the bodily injury is getting worse and worse. Or am I overreading into this? How do we make sure na we are not giving in to panic and fear-mongering by pro-China makapili, itago natin sa pangalan na DDS side, and at the same time also not be complacent about this potentially spiraling out of control? What is your reading of the latest situation?
Well, clearly, this is an escalation of China, no? Because it's serious if one state boards the vessel, the naval vessel of another state. And these tenders are part of the warship, no? They are auxiliary naval auxiliaries,
Right.
these small boats. So that's serious because naval ships enjoy sovereign immunity. They cannot be boarded, they cannot be arrested, even if they are the territorial sea. You can ask them to leave if they are not following international law. But if they are in the exclusive economic zone, there's freedom of navigation. They have a right to be there. So you cannot board. This is really a blatant violation of international law of UNCLOS. And in that sense, it's an escalation of China because they boarded and they towed one of our
grabe.
auxiliary ships. No, but this is a contest. It's like the skirmishes between the Chinese and the Indians in the Himalayas. And there's
good
a
point.
zone there where they cannot carry firearms, so they go there and carry sticks. So the Chinese now don't carry firearms. They were not carrying firearms. And they knew that the Marines were instructed not to use firearms. The Marines had firearms, but they were instructed not to use their firearms. So the Chinese knew that our Marines could not use the firearms, but the Chinese brought knives and bolos, machetes. So, of course, they were at a...
Machetes! I mean, grab, ano to, narcos? This is like Mexico. I mean, what's going on? Labanan ng mga sindikato ba to?
It's like really
Machete.
the skirmish between
Oh,
the
shit.
Indians and the Chinese in the
Oh, my.
Himalayas. They were bringing clubs
Machete.
because it was
Ano to,
you
Kung Fu
cannot carry
Panda?
weapons in that area. So something similar happened
Oh, my God.
here, no? But I think we should use fast boats. Because what if you saw that picture where it was really more like a tugboat because the shape of the boat that was being towed was not a fast craft.
Yeah.
You cannot bring a slow boat to China in that area because you know that the Chinese maritime militia will swarm over you. It has to be a very fast boat. So I think we should be using very fast boats.
I'll ask you more about the modalities, no, in terms of anong mga pwede natin gamitin para hindi tayo kakawain dyan, Justice Carpio. But going back to this question, should we send, I don't know, our Moro brothers or Bajau, you know? I mean, people who will give these Chinese Kung Fu guys their you know, good match, di ba? Kung Bajau yan, di mo mahuli yan sa tubig. Kung Machete, good luck sa'yo pag morong kalaban mo. I'm just saying, Justice, maybe this is time for some outside-the-box thinking.
Well, the soldiers who were in those rigid hull inflatable boats,
Right.
HIBs, were really special forces of the Navy.
Yeah.
So, but they were at a disadvantage because they had strict instructions not to use firearms. So they used their bare
Right.
hands.
I actually appreciate you bringing up the Himalayas case kasi massive yung injuries yun between both India and China, and to consider
Yes.
these are two nuclear powers, billion strong nations, and after that actually what they did was they launched another round of negotiations. So they made sure na even if nagkaroon ng almost patayan ng marami-rami, hand-to-hand combat in the Himalayas. I mean, you couldn't get more Bollywood than that, right? I mean, you can imagine a Bollywood movie 360, nagsusuntukan yung mga Chinese and Indians. So, in a way, I mean, again, I'm not trying to downplay this, but in a way, this is not completely out of the box, in the sense that we see this also between China and other countries. Not to mention with Vietnamese also, long history of violence. So, ang sinasabi ba natin dito, Justice Carpi, is wag natin i-push muna yung panic button. Na as much as we should be alarmed, we shouldn't make too much out of this. Is this what you're saying?
Yes, I don't think it's time to push a panic button, but we should be prepared. One, very important, we should use fast boats. Fast boats that will outrace the Coast Guard small fast crafts of the Chinese. No?
Right.
And there are many ways of doing it. We can airdrop, helicopter drop, because our big Coast Guard vessels have can carry helicopters, so they can fly from there very near. Shoal. So there are many ways of resupplying. We have done already airdrops. So and the way I understand it, the Sierra Madre has been repaired enough to last for maybe 10 more years. No? So we are not in a hurry to bring construction materials to repair BRP Sierra Madre,
okay.
because it can, the way I understand that from sources is that it can stay there for another 10 years.
So in short, what we're saying is that there's a lot of noise out there, without being too dismissive about it. But fundamentally, things on the ground have moved in the favor of the Philippines. In short, keep calm and support West Philippines. Essentially, yun yung mensahe natin dito.
Definitely, because you can see the reaction of our friends from abroad. All the embassies came out in support of the Philippines, very strong. The US, the EU countries, Australia, Japan, they all support us because they are invested in ensuring that UNCLOS survives, that UNCLOS can apply to the South China Sea, because they don't want China to make the South China Sea the internal lake of China.
Right.
So
Right.
you can just imagine if today they decide, the U.S. and its allies decide to leave the South China Sea, tomorrow the 10-dash line will become the national boundary of China. So they will not allow that, because that would mean the collapse of UNCLOS.
Yeah, and just
We're
is
lucky
right.
that they are equating that with the collapse of UNCLOS.
And just as of course, 'di ba, kung maalala ng tao nung naglabas ng China ng 10-dash line nila, nauna pa yung mga Indians, 'di ba, ang nag-respond doon, and then Malaysians, Filipinos, Indonesians, even Russians ay naiinis doon sa 10-dash line ng China. So, I mean, people make it look as if tayo lang yung, mga Pilipino ang mga drama queen. I mean, that's the attack, 'di ba? Ginagaslight tayo na ang Pilipinas ay drama queen, ganyan-ganyan. But actually, that's the situation is marami naiinis sa China, except not everyone is expressing it in the same way. Now, just I want to push a little bit on this point before I go into the bigger diplomatic and strategic picture, and then we pivot to the Dutertes and all. What about the suggestion na gagamit tayo ng mga mas malalaking barko? We can retrofit some of the transport cargo ships or something like that. Now, you use a combination of going big and going fast. Na to make it operationally much more complicated for China to make this kind of aggressive gray zone interventions.
Well, we have on order with Japan, I think 4 more big boats, no, big Coast Guard vessels, and what we need really are fast supply crafts, small crafts but very fast that can go to the shallow waters for purposes of resupplying Sierra Madre, BFP Sierra Madre. But we can also use helicopter because the our Coast Guard vessels can carry helicopters also. So you can just imagine they can just helicopter the supplies from near Union Shoal where
Yeah.
the Coast Guard vessel will go. No, so there are many ways of
Operationally, yeah.
resupplying and it's good that the BFP Sierra Madre has been strengthened. It will last for another 10 years. So
Good news.
I think
Yeah.
we can we should not there's no need to push the panic button yet.
Yeah. Of course, Justice Scorpio, my suggestion is, and I hope authorities are listening to us, yung chopper ni Mayor, Bamban Mayor Alice Go, I suggest gamitin natin yung chopper na yan. Mukhang makawaran doon na itong mayor na to. I don't know, yung mga Pogo friends natin, maraming chopper mga yan. Maybe we can use this Chinese Pogo chopper people. Di ba? I mean, Justice Scorpio, I'm just being creative here with resourcefulness and all.
Yeah. To now that you brought up the Pogos, the Chinese embassy said that they want the Pogos banned also. So, because in China, gambling is banned, and they try to block through their great firewall of China all the websites of the Pogos here from being accessed from players in China. So they really don't want the Pogos to operate because it's equivalent to dollar salting.
Yeah.
But, it's funny because the PAGCOR, which issues the licenses to Pogos, says to get a license, you must prove that your market abroad allows gambling. So
Okay.
the market of all of these Pogos is mainland China.
Yeah.
And China has declared several times that they have banned gambling. There is no gambling allowed, but yet they get the license from PAGCOR. How could PAGCOR believe that that there is gambling in China? So, I mean, right there and then, even the Chinese embassy is saying that, no, we don't allow. But yet, PAGCOR allows the Pogos, and the market of these Pogos is China. So it's very clear that somebody's just fooling around with the licenses.
Well, I'm sure, fooling around, but, having a good life from things you're saying. Wala akong sinasabi. I'm just saying, fooling around, but not a fool, obviously. Oh, Justice, I mean, I want to talk about it. I think this is another instance kung saan mas maniwala ako sa China kaysa yung mga kaibigan natin dito. Di ba dun sa gentleman's agreement, hindi mukhang totoo talaga yung sabi ng China, ayoko maniwala kay Panelo eh. I think this is another instance, I take the side of Embassy of China over our own politicos or kung sino mga fooling around dyan. So, I think Duterte is the only top-level Filipino politician who has openly supported Pogo. Everyone else is may pagka-plausible deniability or anything like that. What do you think about, again, I know this has not gone through the court procedure, proper judicial procedure. But anong tingin mo dito sa Sherwin Gatchalian's expose na ito na si Waping Guo. So at least yung family name is consistent at mukhang kamukha niya. Actually, I was wondering like kung this is her 13 years old pa lang siya and now she's almost she's late 30s or whatever. Ano bang skincare ng mga to? I mean, is there something I don't know about?
Yeah.
Jessica, what do you think about that? Parang time frozen.
Malapit na mabubuking. There are documents in the Bureau of Immigration and in the yung resident visa visa program.
Yung investor, special
Department of
investor
Trade,
visa.
yeah.
Special
investors visa.
Si Dad.
Sigurado ako may mga
Nilalaman
pictures
siya.
siya doon. Nagpakita siya doon, no? You submit your pictures if you apply. So lalabas yan, malapit na.
The mystery will be unresolved. Justice, again, this is completely irrelevant. I'm sure you have not heard anything about this, but Yung favorite natin na ex-human rights lawyer at of the three, I would say is the best spokesman Duterte had. Ito si si Harry. Anong etong nahanap daw yung letter niya. Nag-lawyer daw siya dun sa isang may-ari ng land na kinuha ng Pogo. I mean, what's going on? What is your reading there without getting into cyber libel? I don't want a former associate justice getting cyber libeled. But, oh, not to mention, okay lang ba may travel body pag Wala na, okay. Erase.
Ang dami yan sa Viber group.
Pulang-pula na ako. Basta Justice, pag may travel body nga, kailangan dyan sa West Philippines eh. Baka naman, di ba? Baka naman. Justice, pag-usapan natin ito. So I was just in down under sa New Zealand to hindi Australia, and we were talking about ASEAN. A lot about ASEAN, and so there was a Shangri-La dialogue that we discussed last week. But there was another conference, the Asia Pacific Roundtable, hosted by Malaysia, kung saan halos walang Pilipinong inimbita except yung may isang kaibigan natin na dalawa. And I was told, namarites sa akin ng mga kaibigan ko, na ang pinupoint ng mga Malaysians at yung mga Chino is ASEAN minus Philippines. Essentially, ang nilalabas nila dito na ang Pilipinas ang pasaway, tayo ang may kasalanan sa gulo na ito, at tayo yung outsider sa ASEAN, di ba? What would you say about that? Kasi ang sagot ko is, well, I rather have Philippines minus ASEAN kasi useless naman kayo totally dyan sa West Philippines. How are we gonna work this out? Kasi next year, Malaysia na maging Malaysia na maging chairman ng ASEAN. I'm sure Anwar will be all about Gaza and US hypocrisy and all of that. Okay, I get it. But Anwar also said that he will pursue quote-unquote aggressive diplomacy and talk to Marcos on the South China Sea issue. Justice Gar, what is your understanding? How should we approach ASEAN? Kasi minsan na nasasaktan din ako na nilalabas nila na tayo mga Pilipino, tayo pa yung gina-gaslight. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gen Z term na gaslight, but this is very, very, nainis talaga ako, and I could see nagsisympathize yung mga kaibigan natin sa Down Under.
Well, of course, you have to take out Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos because they are loyal to China. They're getting a lot of funds from China. But Anwar, he said recently that I don't have a problem with China because they were able to survey and get the gas with the help of the Americans and Australians. So, as far as concerned, he has no problem with China because he's getting the gas, even if China does not recognize Malaysian EEZ, no? Because bottom line is, can you get the gas? So, and the Chinese have a lot of investments in Malaysia, and the Malaysians also have a lot of investments in China. So, of course, Anwar is looking after his own Scottish self-interest, but I do not think they can really isolate us because then there will be no consensus.
Right.
They need our vote for ASEAN to act because of the consensus policy of China. Everybody must be in before there can be a ASEAN position, no? And they are not supporting us, but they actually use the arbitral award. Their minister said the 9-10 dasaran is ridiculous. I mean, they actually use the award. But, they always look after their self-interest first. And that's also the position of Singapore. Well, of course, we all know the position of Vietnam because the Vietnamese will always be fiercely against any Chinese encroachment, no? So, if Anwar wants a consensus, he has to talk to us.
How can you... So, that's completely my understanding. Actually, ang basa ko dito, Justice Scorpio, is ang ginawa ng Malaysia, they're quite good, no? They got what they wanted doon sa West Capella oil exploration for Petronas. But in exchange, what they did is, they lawyered for China on the AUKUS issue. Diba? Sila yung pinaka nag-bash sa AUKUS. So, ang basa ko dito is, yun yung parang quid pro quo na nangyari na, okay, let us get our way here. Yeah, I mean, Di ba? I was thinking about it the other day nung nagsusulat ako. Sabi ko, oh nga, no, it makes perfect sense. 2020, 2021, this is also the time when Malaysia was all bashing AUKUS. So they kind of did their own quid pro quo with China, di ba? And at the same time with Vietnam also you have a different situation, the economic investments, the internal situation there. So this raises a different question. It doesn't raise a question of ayan, TikTok natin, naglolo ko bigla. Totally not suspicious. This doesn't raise an issue of lack of solidarity. It's more of an issue of everyone being very practical and selfish here. Do you think so? In that, so paano yun? What could be the common ground here? Because you and I have been pushing for a code of conduct among ASEAN countries for a long time. And immediately na-shut down yan ng ibang ASEAN countries as a non-starter. So, what could be a point of convergence aside from bilateral with Vietnam?
Well, the Chinese will not agree to a code of conduct until they complete their island building, and they still need to put up an air naval base on Scarborough Shoal. So that code of conduct will continue to be suspended. So what we should do is actually strengthen our relationship with the US, UK, France, and all like-minded countries, which is what the administration is doing, and I'm happy about that. We must strengthen our alliances with naval powers outside of the region, because these naval powers have also real interest in maintaining UNCLOS in the South China Sea, because 25% of the South China Sea are high seas, and the high seas belong to all mankind, including the nations in Europe and in North America. So they really have a legitimate interest in the South China Sea.
Yeah. Now, Justice Scorpio, let's transition back to the Philippines. I mean, what would the end of the unity mean for the foreign policy of the Philippines? Does it make it easier for Marcos to push with his current course of action with Sara Duterte no longer being there in the cabinet? I mean, operationally, was I exaggerating it to say medyo awkward for Marcos to have cabinet meetings potentially touching on sensitive issues if there's a sec education there who's not necessarily on board, to put it mildly? I mean, I'm sure when there's like super discussions na sensitive, it's directly with NSA or something like that. But nevertheless, I mean, still awkward, di ba?
Well, I heard about that the full cabinet was hardly convened, and they just met in clusters.
Exactly.
Because they don't want the vice president to be present. And I think that will be over now.
Yeah.
And of course, the vice president has never uttered a single word against China in the last 2 years. And even recently, he never uttered a word against what China did to our resupply mission. No?
But she uttered many words in Chinese last time I checked.
But she greeted the Chinese in Chinese.
Mama.
So the lines are drawn very clearly now. The line in the water is clearly drawn. So if she doesn't speak for our country in the West Philippine Sea, she will lose a lot of supporters.
Again, this I don't want us to get cyber libeled or anything like that, but what would this say to the idea that if the Philippines is kind of like the Berlin of Asia, in the sense that we're at the forefront of a new Cold War, that certain superpower or two may have an interest in directly influencing upcoming elections in 2025, and obviously people can connect the dots here. Are you worried about that situation?
Well, yes, in the sense that China will make an attempt, as they had done in the past, but I don't think they will succeed, because the surveys show that 90% of the people want to defend the West Philippine Sea against China, and China is the most distrusted nation on earth by Filipinos. No? So it's I don't think they can change that in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if Sara Duterte were to be president, mahirapan din siya, considering this is the texture of public opinion, not to mention defense established position she has to deal with. What do you think Marcos should do to Duterte proof, right? So everyone talks about Trump proofing. Duterte proof itong direction ng foreign policy natin. You think we're moving in that direction whereby it will be very hard for a Duterte-like figure in the future to dramatically undercut our positioning in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, over time, that will happen because we are having more and more visiting forces agreement with other countries. We are conducting more naval drills and military exercises with the U.S. and other allies. So the relationship between our militaries and the U.S. militaries and other militaries will deepen. So it will be harder for another Duterte to break that. No?
Yeah, exactly.
Even Duterte couldn't really terminate the VFA because of the opposition from the military.
Justice Scorpio, let me make the argument from the other side that, okay, indeed the Philippines is passing a threshold whereby a Duterte counter pivot could happen, meaning pro-China and all of that. But how do we make sure that we also don't go too far in the other direction, whereby we become essentially just a cog in the machine of American foreign policy, in the sense of deterrence on Taiwan, China policy in the region? How do we make sure we also have that healthy strategic autonomy interaction with the Americans?
Well, other countries that are allies of the U.S. Have allowed U.S. troops to be stationed, and they are even willing to pay for the expenses for these troops, like South Korea, Japan, Germany, Poland, and now the Estonia, Latvia, and the other small states, former USSR states there, because they want the U.S. troops to be a tripwire,
Right.
to make sure that if the Russians attack, the Americans will be hit and the U.S. will be forced to join. But sa atin, we've kicked the Americans out, so we only have the next best thing, of course, is are the EDCA sites to warehouse the military equipment of the U.S. As long as we keep it there, then we don't go too far. Because if going too far means hosting again U.S. military bases here, that I think is the extreme end. But the middle ground will be just to host the military equipment without the U.S. troops being present here. So then the equipment are there in case of an emergency in the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea. We can just break open the lock and use the HIMARS. No?
Yeah. What do you think is the optimal level of American military presence without completely undermining the Philippines' ability to maneuver in ways that is also in accordance with our national interests? I mean, is there a blueprint of how many, I don't know, HIMARS or Typhoon or... Because my understanding is this is also a game of missile defense systems, right? Because the Chinese have very wide range in terms of their anti-cruise ballistic missile capabilities. Kaya mahirapan ng US to intervene without losing significant amount of its naval assets, including aircraft carriers. But if Taiwan, if Japan, and the Philippines also have very strong missile defense systems, then mahirapan din ng China to also deploy invasion or expeditionary force, right? So there's also a battle of missile defense systems going on here, right? What is your understanding of where the Philippines comes in, or how we should move forward?
Well, the minimum requirement is for the HIMARS that will be warehoused here will be HIMARS that can reach the Chinese bases in the Spratlys, no? With a range of about 350 kilometers, no? That would be enough. That will hit all the Chinese bases, because that sends a message to China that we can destroy their bases in case of an emergency. So we are not completely at the mercy of China, because with their missiles in Mischief Reef, they can destroy our fixed bases in Palawan. But the HIMARS are movable, so they cannot be targeted because they are mobile. So I think at the minimum, we should have a HIMARS with a range of about let's say 375 miles. That's kilometers. That's 200 nautical miles.
So multiple.
That protects, yeah.
We're looking at multiple HIMARS deployment, right?
Yeah, in Palawan and in Luzon, facing the South China Sea. Well, we have the BrahMos, but we have only, I think, 2 or 3 batteries. We need to purchase more. But if the Americans can just warehouse their HIMARS here, that will help us a lot.
Yeah. Justice, let's talk also about the Taiwan situation. I mean, what is your read of that? Do you think there's enough time for us to make deterrence-oriented, preparations, or do you think we're reaching a point of no return? I mean, what is your understanding of room for maneuver for the Philippines?
Well, recently, President Xi told, I think he told the EU president that the Americans are the one pushing Taiwan to instigate the mainland Chinese to invade Taiwan because they know that that will be a debacle for mainland China. So it looks like President Xi is backing off because he's saying if we invade, then we are falling into the trap of the U.S. So I think he realizes that he cannot do it, and he has created an excuse that if I do it, I'm actually falling into the trap set by the U.S., which is very strange because that was his
what he told the
flagship,
Europeans.
project.
Yeah.
To reunite China. So now he's saying if I reunite, it will be a trap set by the U.S. So that my worry is that what will he do? Because he cannot do the first. The priority is to invade and seize Taiwan. The next best thing for them is to get the West Philippine Sea from the Philippines. It's the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So we have to prepare for that.
Justice, are you worried about this tendency whereby, remember the whole NATO expansion narrative of Putin, right? To set up, the predicate for invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine is threatening them because it's the NATO dagger pointing at Russia, blah blah blah. So if we do something, ginusto niyan. Essentially, that's what Putin was saying. Except, of course, he got humiliated and lost 500,000 people into casualties and all. But China, I'm hearing a lot of pro-China trolls, makapilis, some kunyari leftist progressives, yung mga ganyan types, also making this argument na, us by welcoming HIMARS and Balikatan and all of that, we're going to be the dagger pointing at China. Kumbaga, they're saying we are like the version of Ukraine in terms of a US, Asian, NATO pointing at that. Should we be worried about that kind of rhetoric? Is this part of a way of also normalizing isolation of the Philippines? Kasi ang concern ko is yung China weaponizing the global South discussion. Us and Palestinians and Malaysians and Brazil and blah, 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 we are like part of a community of independent post-colonial nations, and then Philippines and Taiwan and Ukraine are like the puppets of the West, blah, blah, blah. So if ever something happens to them, sorry na lang. Parang very mafioso. Yeah, you have a nice family out there. It's sad to see something happens to them, Antonio. Like very much like that. What is sad? I don't want something to happen, and then they'll cut their steak and eat it. What do you think about that kind of rhetoric, Justice?
Well, actually, whether we host the Americans here in terms of EDCA sites, we host their military equipment here, their weapons. Whether we do that or not, China will grab the West Philippine Sea. That's their plan. It doesn't matter to them whether the Americans gave us weapons or not. So they will follow their own plan. So we have to also plan based on that. That China, they started in 1947 by drawing a map. Now they have implemented it by getting the paracels from half of the paracels from the Vietnamese, by getting the Spratties from us and from the other countries. They're getting Scarborough from us. So they have implemented their 1947 9-line, 10-line map, and they will not stop. They will continue until they have developed an air and naval base on Scarborough Shoal. So whether we like it or not, whether the Americans have more EDCA sites or not, they will do it. So we must have our own plan how to stop China from grabbing our island territories and maritime zones. No?
I mean, just is what I say, yung mga nagsabi mag-neutral tayo. Paano tayo maging neutral sa sarili natin, bakuran?
Pag neutral ka, wala kang kakampi. In other words,
Exactly.
the Americans will not help you. You have to face China alone. And if you face China alone, tiklup ka. Wala kang panalo.
I mean, these people never learned anything from Duterte years, no? Who got zero out of China all those years. No, I mean, Justice, how can you even be neutral kung ikaw yung kasama sa, yung backyard mong kinukuha, hindi, neutral tayo. Huwag tayo patulong sa kapitbahay, baka magalit ito. Sinasakop na yung backyard mo eh. Diba? I mean, it's one of the dumbest things. Sorry. I mean, to put it in my favorite senator's term, si Nancy Binay, Cynthia Villar. Nancy Binay on. Nancy Binay is my real favorite. Pa ito si Cynthia Villar, sabi niya, pababa tayo. Di ba? Yung pinagalitan niya yung agriculture secretary of the... I mean, this is a ridiculous argument that we're hearing from them. But Justice, speaking of ridiculous, this is the last part because I know, we're a little bit above time. Justice, I want to ask you, ito na naman yung fast talk natin. Ano sa tingin nyo dun sa sinabi ng mga Dutertes na very violent daw yung nangyari kay Quiboloy? At yung sinabi na kanyang abogado na he's not hiding, he's just not available. I mean, like, ano to postmodern?
Sa yung ginawa ng police, violent, very violent na daw. Yung ginagawa nila, extrajudicial killing, hindi violent.
I mean, zero self-awareness.
Yeah, it's really just out of this world for them to say na violent. Si Duterte, keeps on saying to the police, to kill.
Yeah.
What is more violent than that? Kill.
Well, Justice, I think to be fair to them, if ever you can be fair, pagdating sa mga mahirap, ano yan, ganun yung yung mga attack niya, adik yan, ganyan. Pero pansin mo, pag mayayaman ang pinag-usapan, biglang forgiveness, di ba? Pag kunyari Marcos crimes era, hindi, forgiveness, let's move on, magnanimity, pagsisinta naman, hindi, binigay ako ng, sumakay ako sa chopper niya. I mean, that's the feudalistic reality we see with this with this great leaders na pag mayaman ang pinag-usapan, katulad ng Quiboloy, biglang, hindi, may due process yan, may karapatan. Pero, just as totoo ba na winotter canon nila yung police? I mean, what the heck? Parang gawain ng China yan Pati naman sa ganyan, ginagaya nila yung China, water cannon. Saan nila kinuha yan?
Well, if there was a due use of force, they can always file a complaint.
Water cannon.
Pero wala namang sinabi kill. Yan ang pinaka-most violent.
Yeah, I know.
Pinatay mo
Yeah.
Wala namang ganyan
Yeah.
So, I think it's just drama. They just want to get the attention. Pero for somebody who his battle cry was kill, for him to say na this is excessive violence,
excessive.
I don't think anybody would believe that.
Well, Justice, of all virtues of Duterte, self-awareness is not one of them. I'll just be nice about this. Justice Carpio, thank you so much, Justice, for joining us for another fantastic discussion. I think everyone really enjoyed it in the sense that we went from high geopolitics to low LGU politics. But siguro it's a good news na yung police at least nag-attempt na mag-arrest, di ba? Mukhang di ba? Something is happening, right? Something is happening. So,
At saka pinalitan yung lahat ng mga old-timers.
Exactly.
So yung connection ng mga Duterte
lagot kayo dyan. So,
wala yung mga loyal followers nila, wala.
So that means
kaya sila ngayon they feel they're slowly being cornered.
yeah, exactly. On that note, Justice Carpio, I think that means we have to have a live stream, hopefully sooner than later, on a potential arrest of a friend or two of ours, Jan sa Davao. I'm sure there'll be a lot of interesting developments there pa. Thank you so much again, Justice Carpio. Is there something that you want to share with our beloved folks, especially on TikTok, na kahit binablock tayo kanina pa, andyan pa rin sila. Kailangan ba i-block itong TikTok na to sa Justice? Are you worried about TikTok?
Yeah, well, the TikTok, I think we have to decide to block them one day because yung mga pro-Philippines, yung anti-Chinese uh, 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 uh,
Well, anti-China bullying, not
videos,
anti-China.
no?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mga pro-China videos on the West Philippine Sea na sasapawan tayo.
Exactly.
Tinatanggal yung mga pro-Philippines video on the West Philippine Sea. Bakit natin payagan yan?
Exactly. Ako, nangyari sa akin ilang beses, nilog out ako, nag-overheating ko. I mean, obviously, it's on my burner's phone, like on my number 17 phone, just in case you wanna spy on me, good luck sa inyo. But, yeah, I think that's something, another conversation we should have also soon, Justice Carpio. Maraming salamat, mabuhay po kayo, and thank you so much. Everyone, again, is super appreciating Justice Carpio for your service to our country. Hopefully, we'll have even a more eventful and more refreshing arbitration ceremony. Malapit na, wala pang 2 weeks. Just over 2 or 3 weeks from now. Yeah. Salamat, Justice.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you to our viewers.
God bless po. Thank you, sir.
God bless.
Yun, guys. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat sa mga TikTok, guys. Bago kayo maban sa Pilipinas, na pag-usapan natin to. Ako naman kasi nakita ko yung report na talagang ang TikTok na po ang pinaka-fastest growing source of news. My goodness. So there's no way na wala akong gagawin na nahayaan lang natin na purong mga kabila lang magdo-dominate dyan sa TikTok. Kaya mga mukha natin, go lang tayo. Sige, Sir Rolf. We love Duterte. Sige, bahala kayo dyan. Stay there. Okay, on that note, thank you very much. God bless. And talk to you soon. And please continue to support us on different platforms. Episode 517 na tayo on our podcast right now. So you can see the amount of effort we're putting into this. I think no one else has as many, So tuloy-tuloy lang, go lang tayo ng go dito sa natin, sa mga pinopost natin dito. Thank you so much for your support. And as I said, we make sure we get the best guests all around the world, no? So mga flat earthers dyan, sinisigurado natin na all around the world ang mga kinukuha natin from Singapore, from US, Justice Carpio, mga others. Tomorrow naman morning, kung gusto nyo sumali, try ko na rin i-live ito on the side. Si Ted Filo naman ang kasama natin. Pag-usapan natin itong latest sa X-Unit Team. Salamat, God bless, and talk to you soon. Salamat po. Talk to you soon.